Hello everybody, Marcus Godwin here with the Shum Vremeni Noise of Time blog. So once again I'm going to talk about the unfolding events in Belarus. Protests are continuing and workers are going on strike and so on. And there are, above all, the most worrying signs is the usual kind of total hypocrisy and interfering in the affairs of Belarus from EU states, and now of course America has chipped in finally. Took a little bit of a while this time, but it's chipped in with, and of course warnings to Russia not to interfere in the internal affairs of Belarus. Now I'm standing here in St. Petersburg, and I can tell you that kind of Belarus is sort of like just down the road, innit? You know, it's local like, know what I mean? As I said yesterday, these people are the same people basically. There are certain nuances about Belarusian language. There is a Belarusian language, which is a Slavonic, closely related to Russian and other Slavonic languages, but it's spoken by very, very few people in Belarus actually. This is not really the point. The fact of the matter is that legally Belarus and Russia are not one state, but they are two states with considerable levels of, legalized cooperation and joint defense agreements, etc., etc., etc. There is a union between Belarus, Russia and Kazakhstan. For example, the Belarusian border and Russian border is now closed, but only because of the certificate of vaccination ID 19 crisis. Before this border has been for years now totally open. Even if you cross the Belarusian frontier with a foreign visa, as I have done once or twice, or many years ago now, your Russian visa is processed on the Belarusian frontier, and from then on there's no more customs verifications whatsoever. So, how can, quite frankly, like we had a statement from the British, I think, foreign minister, whose election, of course, we are supposed to believe in. He said, we do not recognize the result of the Belarusian elections. Well, why should I recognize the result of the elections in my own country then, Mr. Home Secretary, please? I can't even remember your name. I think it's called Rab, actually, which rather appropriately means slave in Russian and many other Slavonic languages. How can we verify that the British general election was free and fair? It seemed to me that the opposition candidate Jeremy Corbyn was extremely severely vilified in the totalitarian one-voiced British media, be it television or newspapers or whatever. So, let's cut the hypocrisy. Belarus and Russia are basically one country. And as I said yesterday, they should really become legally one country. One of the regular spats that the rather unpredictable, sometimes, Mr. Lukashenko, President of Belarus, has had with Russia was earlier this year when he refused to sign up to further integration measures. So Russia declined to give Belarus more discounts on oil and gas prices, etc., etc., etc. Again, for any of you who are watching this, especially from the Western world, who don't really understand about colour revolutions, when I say this is a colour revolution and it's hypocrisy from the West and so on, this does not mean that people in Belarus maybe do not have some genuine grievances or are not kind of fed up or would like a change after 26 years of the same, often rather heavy-handed president. Well, maybe they do. I just ask the people of Belarus, for the sake of the whole world, for the sake of the Russian world, but also for peace on earth, for the sake of the continuance of Christianity on this earth, and I'm not joking, that they think very carefully about the consequences of actually overthrowing this president, because if he is overthrown in some kind of chaotic but planned manner from the West, as happened to Yanukovych in Ukraine in 2014, this is going to be very bad news. Very, very bad news indeed, above all for the people of Belarus. Don't have any illusions. The Western people who are supposedly supporting your quest for democracy don't give a goddamn beep about you whatsoever. You are just ants to be used in their campaign against Russia and nothing more. That's why Belarus exists. really. I know for many young people in that country, you've got used to this idea now, you rather like it. But as I say, probably, in fact, I know for a fact that you get your information from Western internet. And you probably, when you see the brutality of Belarusian police, you probably think that's the only place it happens, because the Western internet doesn't show you anything about the brutality of French, American, Australian, and even now British police too. It's also a point worth mentioning, actually, that Belarus, together with Sweden, is one of the countries that didn't lock down. So, you know, there were restrictions and so on in Belarus because of the certificate of vaccination ID 19 crisis that we're all going through now. But they didn't lock down. And this could also be punishment in some ways, because we can see that it's the Western countries and Western governments, especially those most involved in how to say, non-conformist religions or unusual religions, such as Canada, Australia, New Zealand and so on. These are the countries that are most incessantly obsessed with locking their citizens up in home, closing down small businesses all over the place because of uncomfortable, dangerous for people with existing conditions and dangerous for old people, but people are dying every year. Anyway, let's not get distracted into this other major global problem which is going on now. As I say, Belarus is Russia's business. Belarus is absolutely Russia's business, 100%. And although Russia will do anything to avoid any kind of conflict, I cannot really imagine that they can just sit back and allow to happen in Belarus what happened in Ukraine. Also, I heard a commentator on Russian television today saying a very important thing. Let's just pan in on our little friend down here, because I've just seen... Oh, okay. There was a rat. For those who don't see, we're on top of a lake here. And there was a friendly little rat came to listen to me on the beach down here. Yeah, he pointed out that were this to happen, if pro-Western politicians take over Belarus, it's far easier for Belarus to sign up to NATO than Ukraine. Now, I don't think that's going to happen, because I don't think the West will dare try that on, but you never know. You just never know. I mean, they've dared to try on the whole certificate of vaccination ID 19, blah, blah. So who knows how far they're going to go, actually. The reason for that is that NATO cannot accept a country which has territorial disputes. And, of course, Ukraine has two. One, because it's idiotically attempting to continue to convince us all that Crimea is Ukraine and it's one day going to get it back. This is, of course, what the Western leaders want, what America wants, and, the satanic banking cabal, etc. That's what they're interested in, above all, getting Crimea back. But there's also the problem of Donbass. The Donetsk Republic and Lugansk People's Republic refused the putsch in Ukraine and broke away with military conflict. So there's what can be genuinely called a civil war in Ukraine, because for decades, although the history is basically fabricated in the old days, but for decades Ukraine was kind of divided 50-50 down the middle between those who were looking to the EU and Western Europe and so on, and those who are pro-Russian or simply are Russian, end of.